I can't tell you where they were delivered. This must be a very difficult time for you. The words seemed like such a cliché, but for all that, they had some impact. She evidently found in them some small consolation and managed a weak smile. Her name was Sarah, widow of David Ross. I guess she was what you'd call a soccer mom. The house was pristine, domestic, suburban. The mantelpiece was lined with photographs that ought not to be. A picture of their wedding, David posing with a gigantic bass he caught out at Silver Lake, and the three of them, Sarah, David, and their son, Elijah. The happy family. Their son. I hadn't expected that. The son of an immortal. He had answered the door, 8 years old and dressed like a Washington Redskin, complete with face paint. He played on a video game in the corner of the room, blasting away at the marauding zombies. For a moment I thought everything I'd ever known about immortals was wrong, or that somehow David Ross was different, that somehow, impossible though it was, he'd fathered a child. And then I realized there was no miracle, just a heartfelt dream. Sarah told me in hushed tones that they'd adopted Elijah when he was only 2. They'd tried for years to have kids, but to no avail. It was David who suggested adopting. They'd been so happy. She started to cry, and I reached out a tentative, comforting hand and thought better of it. Once again I found myself failing to comfort a grieving woman. She went into the kitchen to make some tea, and I went with her. As we moved through the house, I started to notice the cracks in the suburban facade. The hallway was bedecked with ceremonial swords. Sarah saw me inspecting them and asked me if I knew what had happened. Her parents were saying it must have been the strain of the job and this damned heat had sent him over the edge. Why else would he have been fighting that woman up on Fulbright? I shrugged my shoulders and tried to offer comforting platitudes, but I knew just how hollow they sounded. I asked her about the diamond cufflinks. Her attitude toward me changed instantaneously. She stared at me, angry. She told me they were gifts from a client, and that was all. He only wore them on special occasions when he had business meetings. Silence dominated. I apologized for intruding upon her grief, made my excuses and headed for the front door. The kid was still playing, apparently oblivious, concentrating instead on killing bad things. So I took the picture of David Ross capturing that bass and hid it under my jacket. I floored the Porsche and headed north. The sky had begun to darken. Another sequel of a rainstorm moving in. Maybe it would break the cloying heat. Or maybe not. As I drove, I thought about David Ross. I thought about the cozy life he'd constructed around himself. I thought about his wife and his son. Not that David Ross was unusual. Look at Antoine. Look at me. Look at my cousin Connor. The world of the immortal is one of excitement, of danger, of terror. Hardly surprising we should crave normality, the certitude of suburban life, of children's parties, of the 9 to 5, of fun fairs, of fishing trips and family vacations and routine. Picket fences, but there's no escaping the game. David Ross would have known that eventually his lies would be found out, that eventually he'd be forced to play. That's what had happened to me. And with each immortal I consume, I feel myself diminished, diluted. I can feel them all inside of me, every second of every minute of every day, struggling for awareness to be heard. Not just the ones I killed, but the ones they killed, and the ones they in turn killed. They never go away. And the loudest voice of all was Connor, my own dear cousin, who had killed the same as the rest. The grim truth was David Ross was lucky. He and the woman who died with him. To burn out of existence, to simply cease to be, runs counter to what it is to be immortal and counter to the rules of the game. But I couldn't help envy him. I pushed my foot hard on the accelerator. I trudged up the steps of the brownstone, but I didn't get as far as ringing the doorbell. I was forced to leap out of the way as something heavy and metallic was dropped from the first floor window. It clanged into the steps and bounced into a nearby hedgerow. I had to crane my neck to see that the object was actually a barbell. Something else heavy dropped out of the window and crashed spectacularly on the steps of the building. a 1940s gramophone. In a moment, assorted clothes started to rain down, followed by cardboard boxes of belongings which bounced and spilled down the steps and onto the sidewalk. The door was ajar, so I quickly darted in. The hallway was dank, the walls covered in moss and unidentifiable dark red stains. I stepped over piles of unopened mail and headed up the stairs. I pushed open the door of the first-floor apartment. A muscular, bald-headed man, tattooed and clad in a vest and ill-fitting jeans, was moving around the room, frantically gathering up belongings and throwing them out of the window. A cigar hung from his mouth. Pieces of broken furniture were scattered around the room, and as I watched, he launched another suitcase of clothes through the open window. I ventured up to the man as though I were approaching an angry bear. "Whoa," I said, palms raised.
"She's gone!"
yelled the man.
"Finally, she's out of my hair."
Who's gone?"
"Her! Mad Bridget!"
He thrust his cigar in the direction of a framed photograph lying amidst the debris. The glass was broken, and there was a footprint on the face of a severe-looking blonde woman. "You're a relative?" I ventured.
"Do I look like a relative?"
he spat.
"I'm her landlord."
"I see."
"Bridget comes here 3 years ago, wanting somewhere to stay, and I say, fine, you pay, you stay."
He went on.
"Does she pay? No, she does not. Does she stay? Oh yeah, you betcha."
"Tough call. What did you do?"
"What did I do? I'm a big man. I try and move her. But she's crazy, man. You know what? She keeps weapons. She works out. She's not like any ordinary woman. You take my meaning."
He gestured around the room. Mounted on the walls I could see assorted knives and swords, and in the corner a pair of manacles and a whip.
"But I watch TV. I see her attack that businessman, and I know it's Bridget."
He nodded to himself.
"I see her burst into flames, and I think, yes, she is an evil woman, and that is God's final reckoning, to make her burn."
"Look, I just need to find out about her. The way she died is perplexing, I think you'll agree."
"It's the will of God, man. That's what it is."
"I just need to know what she was like, the sort of places she went to." His eyes narrowed.
"You a cop?"
he asked. "I'm helping them," I lied. He crossed his arms.
"Listen to me. I'll tell you about Bridget Ingvarson or Ingvarson or whatever her name is. She's not like any other woman."
I knelt down and picked up the broken photograph, shaking the glass off. The woman's face was haunted, sad, her clothes dowdy, torn. But there it was, hanging incongruously, the exquisite diamond necklace. I gestured with the photograph. Can I take this?"
"Sure, take it all. What do I care? None of this is worth anything anyway."
"Thanks for your time." I turned to go, but the landlord grabbed my arm.
"There's a bar,"
he said.
"She used to pick up her men. Hell, her women there. Who's to know, huh? Maybe you go there, maybe you find her ghost."
The bar was nowhere near as sordid as I was expecting. Certainly the subdued lighting helped ensure everyone's modesty. If I peered real hard, I could see couples and groups engaged in jokey conversation, just like you'd find in any other bar. The only difference being that these people wore rubber, latex, or leather. I was served by a dark-haired girl called Tina, dressed entirely in leather, her face a complex network of studs and chains. She repeatedly curled a lock of her hair, unable or unwilling to gaze directly at me. "Interesting place you got here," I said casually when she next passed my booth.
"Sure thing,"
she said with an appealing crooked smile.
"More of the same."
I raised my glass appreciatively. A sudden, full-throated male scream emerged from somewhere in the shadows. "And they say that romance is dead."
"Don't you believe it?"
she smiled.
"We've actually had people get hitched in here before. Can you believe that? The owner had the place blessed and everything."
"You don't say." She gazed at me properly for the first time, intrigued.
"I haven't seen you here before. Your first time somewhere like this, huh?"
No, not really my bag."
"Yeah, well, they all say that." "Why are you here then? Just curious?"
"No, well, I'm looking for someone."
"Someone?"
she repeated.
"Or something?"
"A woman. And a man." She grinned again.
"You've come to the right place."
I put the photograph of Bridget on the table, her forehead corrugated into a frown.
You a cop?
No, I'm not a cop. Can you look at the picture for me?
People who come here value their privacy, if you get my meaning. People, ordinary people, well, you know what they're like. They think we're weirdos for liking this kind of stuff. It's just pleasure, you know.
And pain. She flashed her lopsided grin at me again.
Same difference.
Listen to me, I'm not a cop. I need to find out who this woman is.
I know her. Ask Bridget. She comes here a lot.
I placed the photograph of David Ross on the table. Did you ever see her with this guy? She shook her head again.
No, never with that guy. Oh, wait. Sorta.
I leant forwards, eager. Sorta? What do you mean?
Well, it's not like they came in together or anything. He was already here with some other woman. A Swedish woman, yeah, Bridget. Well, she arrived and started to scream at the guy. Really scream, like she wanted to kill him. In fact, I think they would have started fighting there and then if they could have.
Why not? Of course, the place is blessed. It's technically holy ground. That's why they couldn't fight here.
I'm sorry?
It doesn't matter, I told her. What were they arguing over?
The woman? The other woman.
Really? You sure?
Yeah. I've seen her here loads of times. With both of them.
Dating both of them? You sure?
Uh-huh.
Said Tina.
Sure look that way. Oh, that's just the scene, though. Nobody pays it any mind normally.
So that night when you saw them arguing, that's when they both realized the woman had been cheating on them?
I guess so.
And the woman, what was she like? Tina thought.
Real beautiful, but austere. You know what I mean? Had some kind of foreign accent. Like one of those girls in the James Bond movies. You know, a Rusky or something.
Antoine's apartment was empty when I arrived. I racked my brains as to where the lovers might have gone. And then I remembered that kiss. I searched the fairground for them. It was different at this time of night. An older crowd, a drunker crowd. Adults letting off steam, playing grown-up games, and definitely no children. I scanned the people, desperate to find my friend and his lover. And then I saw her, sitting alone by the fountain.
Duncan! What are you doing here?
Where is he?
Antoine? He went to get us some candy floss. What's the problem, Duncan?
The problem? You set them up, didn't you, Maria? Led them on, gave them expensive jewelry, then arranged for them to meet. Am I right?
Who? Okay, you mean Bridget and David. The game comes to us all, Duncan.
Even you, huh, Maria?
I abhor it, you know that. But I never said I didn't play it.
But they didn't get to play, did they? What did you do to them?
They were playing the game, Duncan. They brought their destiny upon themselves. All I did was give them a spur.
Jealousy. But they couldn't fight in the nightclub because it had been blessed.
They arranged their time and place. Don't worry, it was all very honorable.
Tell me, do you think they deserve to die like that, to burn to death?
I think they're lucky. For them, it's over. You've killed a lot of people, haven't you? Haven't you ever wanted it to stop, Duncan? All those souls babbling away, locked inside you. Must be agonizing.
I grabbed her by the wrist, exposing the lesions on her arm. What did Belloc really do to you?
I told you, Duncan. Belloc was trying to save his daughter, to redeem me.
Tell me what he did to you.
He triggered something.
What? Tell me.
A virus.
I released her from my grip and watched her back away from me, rubbing her arm in discomfort.
Immortal biology is more complex than even Frederick could have guessed. When we play the game, when we fight, energy courses through our veins. That is what he was trying to tap. However, in trying to control the nature of my immortality, Frederick inadvertently activated something that is dormant in all of us. Some kind of defense mechanism.
You're the carrier.
The virus, if that's what you want to call it, this mutation can't be stopped. Try to repress it and it comes back stronger. Try to eradicate it and it repairs itself within seconds. It acts in exactly the same way as our own bodies. Once we are reborn that first time, our bodies are frozen in one instant, like a bug in amber. And barring a severed head will heal to that exact state. It's the same with the virus. Once you have it, that's it. End of story. It's just the way you are. A part of you, buried deep inside.
But once you've contracted it, what then? Why doesn't the mutation cause you to go up in flames straight away? Why lay dormant until you fight?
Frederick asked the same question. The nearest answer he could reach was that the combustion is caused by a massive rush of adrenaline. It ignites our immortal energy, the same power that is within us all. Usually, it's released in a quickening, but when you're infected...
It rips you apart.
Exactly. It consumes us.
Like it consumed Bridget Ingbarson and David Ross at Fulbright Avenue.
They were victims of their own aggression.
No, they were victims of you. I was aware of a figure behind me. Antoine. Duncan? He asked. What's happening? Tell him, Maria. Tell Antoine. I watched her turn to Antoine and take both his hands in hers.
I love you, Antoine.
Like you love Bridget, like you love David.
You cannot begrudge me love, Duncan.
It was then that I saw the diamond ring glinting on Antoine's finger. Antoine, take that ring off. Duncan, Antoine said. Maybe you should go home. Antoine, you need to take the ring off.
It's okay, Antoine. I'll do it for you.
I watched Maria Rostov remove the ring from Antoine's finger and kiss him, lingeringly on the lips.
Happy now?
I glared at her. The diamonds.
No, you think there's some kind of conduit for my evil power? No, Duncan. Antoine's ring is a gift freely given. Nothing more, nothing less.
She held the ring up to show me. Because they're beautiful and they last forever.
They always survive. It's true.
Those people, the Order of Lachesis, who are they really?
Haven't you guessed? Hasn't the great Duncan MacLeod worked it all out? Haven't you pieced together all the clues? How I've spent 3 centuries shut away in a stinking hole, locked away, safe and sound, like some kind of rabid animal.
The penny finally dropped. They're your jailers. I saw Antoine shift uneasily. What do you mean? He asked. I don't understand. I think you owe Antoine an explanation, Maria.
Antoine, I'm so sorry it had to end this way.
Antoine sounded panicked as he asked, What does she mean, Duncan? Maria is carrying a virus, Antoine. A virus that's activated by hate.
And transmitted through love.
I remembered watching them against the backdrop of the roller coaster, and the realization came to me in a sudden rush. A virus transmitted through a simple but lethal kiss. Young lovers. Saliva. It's passed through saliva, isn't it? In a flash, Antoine had unsheathed his sword and thrust it towards Maria's neck.
I'm sorry, Antoine. I really am.
Antoine, listen to me. Maria infected the immortals who died on Fulbright Avenue. She set them up. You cannot kill her. If you strike, you'll destroy yourself, not her. You'll trigger the virus that she's infected you with. This is how Maria Rostov plays the game.
I have no other way of playing the game, Duncan. If I were to attack another, I too would be consumed in fire. I would cease to be. Who wants to be dead forever?
A cure, Antoine muttered. There must be a cure.
There is no cure. I'm sorry.
Put the sword down, Antoine. The tip of the blade quivered millimeters from Maria's milky white neck. You heard her, Duncan, he said hopelessly. There is no cure. Listen to me, Antoine. We'll look. We'll find a cure. Trust me. He looked at me for a moment. I trusted you to give me a normal life, Duncan. I told you, Antoine, it's not possible. Not for people like us. He shrugged slightly. Then the time has come. I watched him lift his sword majestically above his head. Don't do this, Antoine. There can be only one, and it isn't me. And in the moment he went to strike, his skin began to smolder. He smiled at me weakly as his entire body erupted into yellow and blue flame. I tried to grab him, I tried to save him, but the heat was too intense, the fire too rapid. In a moment more, his burnt body collapsed to the ground. As the haze cleared, I looked around. Maria Rostov was gone. I hunted Maria Rostov through the crowds of people, turning this way, turning that, until eventually I stopped and stood, gasping for breath, desperate. She cannot escape, a deep voice came from behind me. The Order of Lachesis. Yeah, well, what kept you? I was aware of cloaked figures surrounding me. This time there are many of us, said the leader. She cannot escape this place. Trapped like a rabid animal? You will not help her, he said. We found your friend's body, so now you understand. Maria carries the virus that killed David Ross and Bridget Ingerson. The unfortunate side effect of Dr. Bullock's research. The figure nodded. The pathogen is passed through saliva and activated by a massive surge in the adrenaline. Yes, I understand. And you? What of your cult? Belloc was a great man, he answered. A hero, no less. He charged us with preventing Maria from dying. She cannot die. Whoever takes her head will become the carrier. The leader looked at me steadily. If we thought we could end her suffering, one of us would stand forth and take her head. Alas, it is not so simple. The virus. In the year before he died, Frederick Belloc made one final discovery, he explained. Despite the differences between immortal and mortal biology, there are sufficient similarities for the virus to be capable of transmission to humans. So if Maria is beheaded, the virus will jump to humanity. It would wipe you out. All of you. Indeed. Belloc realized that. You need only to look at human history. We are as aggressive as you. That is the greatest irony. Belloc's work was meant to save his daughter. Instead, he could destroy us all. Mortal and immortal alike. So Belloc established your order to prevent that from happening. Quite so. Maria, she's ill. We understand, Duncan MacLeod. We want to help her. My eyes played on the silver handcuffs hanging from his belt. By imprisoning her again? The man nodded. Until we find cure, yes. It is the only way. The alternative is cataclysm. She must be found. In that moment, I saw the crowds milling beneath the ancient roller coaster. People were pointing and exclaiming. I followed the crowd's gaze to see a figure of a woman atop the tracks, high above. She'd placed her head upon a rail, waiting. Just then, the ratchet clank of a car beginning its ascent spurred me into action. I scaled the roller coaster frame as quickly as I could, grabbing the peeling paintwork and hoisting myself ever upward. There was no way of stopping the train. I figured I had about 2 minutes before it got to her. I could see Maria, her head placed on the track. She must have grabbed the handcuffs I'd taken from the assailant in the park. She used them to chain herself to the rail. Is this what you really want? Another suicide?
This time I'll make certain. The train will take my head clean off.
And then what?
You're the nearest immortal, Duncan. I guess you'll swallow me up. Of course, you could always run away.
You know, that's not true. Belloc thought the virus was spread to the humans. That's why he created the Order, to stop this happening.
Why should I care about mortals, Duncan? Whoever cared about me?
The Order of Lachesis. They want to help you.
Is that what they told you?
They're looking for a cure. When they found it...
There is no cure, Duncan. The Order have tried their very best to find it, trust me. Belloc would have been proud.
The Order, they experimented on you.
For more than 300 years, I have been injected, cut, burned, scraped. All in the name of a cure. I have died more times than any other immortal.
I am sorry.
I only ever wanted meaning to my life. That's what Belloc promised me. A way to make a difference. As I lay in that stinking cell, in that crumbling dacha, I decided that if I ever escaped, I would make my life have meaning.
By winning the game.
How long do you imagine I would last in a sword fight, Duncan MacLeod? Minutes? Seconds? I was using the only weapon at my disposal. But now, if the Order capture me once again, I will be condemned to an eternity of experimentation. Let me be free!
I had no time to spare. I hefted my katana high into the air and saw Maria smile, closing her eyes. And then I brought the blade down. The handcuffs cracked in half. I wrenched her out of the path of the oncoming roller coaster. We clung to each other, high above the funfair. She didn't struggle as we clambered down. As soon as we stepped onto terra firma, we were surrounded by the Order of Lachesis. I grabbed her and pulled her arms behind her back, snapping handcuffs in place. Maria, they'll help you. She didn't speak. She gazed at me wryly, then shut her eyes and turned away. The promised storm finally broke. As the rain began to pour down and the crowds began to disperse, I watched the Order of Lachesis drag Maria Rostov into the night, into the darkness. In all my time living in Paris, this was the second time I'd ever taken a tour boat down the River Seine. I watched as tourists rushed from side to side, trying to catch glimpses of the landmarks, snapping away with their digital cameras and mobile phones. Nobody noticed me pull the vase from my bag. There was a slight crack in it, but otherwise it was fine. Turned out Wellington Blue was a lot less fragile than it might have seemed. Lifting the lid, I peered at Antoine's ashes. After 300 years, I thought it was time this callow youth be allowed to grow old. I dropped the vase overboard. I watched it bob lazily on the sun-dappled surface, turning and turning as it led on water, gradually sinking. And in a moment more, it had vanished.